Mr. Dominic Mellor, thank you so much for joining our program today on Vitv channel. Shall we start with the outlook for Vietnam's economy and the potential level of growth for 2014-2015 period?
Sure. Our forecast is for the GDP growth to recover slightly, continue recovering from last year was 5.4%. We expect it to pick up to 5.6 and then 5.8%. The main reason we expect the growth to pick up is because of the support on the fiscal side, the fiscal easing, and also we're seeing committed disbursements from FDI, also supporting the construction and manufacturing industries to pick up off the low base. But still the economy remains below the potential because we are seeing domestic investment quite weak as with the ongoing banking sector restructuring, and also consumer demand is very weak as well. And on the inflation side, we expect inflation to remain subdued because of the weak consumer demand, and we also expect inflation exchange rate to remain stable because of the strong FDI and remittance flows.
You have mentioned that Vietnam posted the record low Q1 consumer price index in the first quarter of 2014. This has got some concerns over the low consumption demand and its potential negative impacts on economic growth. What's your take?
The inflation is low because of both external and internal factors. But yes, I think there is a concern that domestic demand is very weak, and that the State Bank of Vietnam's monetary policy measures to try to boost credit growth through high liquidity and reductions in interest rates so far haven't had that effect. And we think that it's probably because it's not a supply side problem, but it's more the demand side problem.
What should be done to boost Vietnam consumption demand and economic growth?
So, like I said, I think we need to work on the demand side. So what I mean by that is that for example, in Vietnam, a lot of businesses are first-generation household, informal sector businesses. And sometimes they don't have business management skill that allow them to go to the bank and to apply for a loan to access credit. So I think the government need to try and support over the medium to long term those kind of business development skills for the general public. And also the other issue is on the collateral. The commercial banks, the way they assess risk is still based on traditional method of assessing collateral. And sometimes it's very difficult for these small household rural businesses to put forward the necessary collateral to access credit. So I think also we need to look at the way commercial banks assess their risk may need to be changed to consider for these types of informal household businesses.
Apart from low consumption demand, what are the risks facing Vietnam in the future?
Well, the other risks to the short-term economic growth are on the external side, like if the world economy, for example, China is continue to slow to the global demand, which would hurt Vietnam as export country. And then domestically, the main risk is around the ongoing non-performing loan problem in the banking sector. The government has taken a lot of measures to try and address them, but they still exist, and there's a lot of work still to be done.
What about the PPP or the infrastructure in Vietnam?
Quality of infrastructure in Vietnam is lagging behind other countries in the region. And as the labor cost in Vietnam increase, it's important that Vietnam can close the gap on its infrastructure if it wants to remain competitive. Yeah. And the new PPP law that the government is working on this year can potentially facilitate transfer of finance, technology, and expertise into infrastructure to improve the inclusiveness and quality of social and physical infrastructure in Vietnam.
And finally, what should the government do in short and mid-term to boost economic growth?
The short term, they have to continue to try and close the gap between the domestic and international standards of regulations. So, whether it's on various factors such as, competition laws, intellectual property rights, ensuring a level playing field, and the way that you account and measure NPLs, the disclosure policies of state-owned enterprises. They need to close that information gap. Into the medium-term challenge is to ensure that these regulations are actually enforced adequately. You cannot having quality international standard regulations is just the first step. Then you need to ensure that they are enforced. And the only way to ensure they are enforced is to increase the capacity of oversight agencies or overlooking SOEs in the banking sector so that they are in a position to enforce the new regulations.
Thank you so much for joining our program today.
You're welcome. Thank you.